football pundits, analysts, fans, everybody, can we please stop blaming smaller clubs for not selling off their players on the schedule of the bigger clubs when they demand it? It's their right to sell when they want to. Stop blaming the smaller clubs for not playing by your timetable. We're going to talk about that and more here at Pints and Punditry at Total FIFA Career Mode. Welcome back to Pints and Punditry here at Total FIFA Career Mode, and today I want to talk about a problem that exists in European football that I think is as big of a problem as Chelsea's massive spending and sovereign wealth funds owning clubs and super leagues and all these other problems that help the big clubs and hurt the smaller clubs. And it came up on Twitter yesterday. This has to do with, or the catalyst for the conversation was Moises Caicedo of Brighton Hove Albion and their high demands for him from Arsenal and a few other clubs who were trying to acquire him at the deadline. And it was because there were some pundits out there who seemed to be upset with Brighton for not playing ball, essentially, and for asking too much. Paul Mearson was the one who really got the thread going. He had made some comments in a post that rubbed me the wrong way. But he's not the only culprit by far, and I was accused of getting too bent out of shape for a pundit who's not all that great at what he does, and it's not about him at all. He's hardly the only one who does this, but this is an ongoing problem in the football world where the big clubs get mad, or the pundits or the fans get mad at these smaller clubs for not playing ball. Now I want to say right off the bat, I say small clubs, and I'm talking about Brighton here. They're not a small club, and I got some pushback from Brighton fans on that, and you're absolutely right. I don't mean small in terms of fan base or in terms of history or anything like that, but budgetarily speaking, not one of the big players in Europe, not one of the big players in the Premier League. You're a seller, not a buyer of 70 million pound type players. So that's what I mean by that. No offense to the Brighton fans and supporters who have been phenomenal, by the way. I got tremendous feedback from the Brighton community on Twitter. I got about 60 new Brighton followers, so thanks for joining the conversation. I'm thrilled. But this is an ongoing problem. This is not a Brighton problem. This is not an Arsenal problem. This is not a Moises Caicedo problem. This is not unique. This is ongoing, and I think it's an epidemic in the football world, which is it is Brighton's prerogative to sell Moises Caicedo or anybody else whenever they damn well please. Now, the argument that Mearson made was, oh, well, if you're going to value him at X, you can't have his wage be Y, right? He's making, I looked it up at about 15,000 pounds a week. Some Brighton fans told me it was closer to 25. Either way, he's not being paid a huge sum for a player who's very talented. And Mearson is right that his weekly wage, does not match their asking price for him. But there's a reason for that. That is so overly simplistic and naive to point out. And Mearson knows better. All analysts know better. It's ignorant to suggest that one has anything to do with the other. Caicedo is 20 years old. He's been with Brighton. I think this is his third season. It's only been a couple years. They purchased him straight out of Ecuador when he was 18 for a low fee and paid him accordingly because he was unproven at that point. Now, obviously, they knew the potential was there. That's why they signed him. But he was unproven, so they paid him an appropriate wage, and now he's due a lot more. Yes, absolutely. And now is the shit or get off the pot time, right? They gotta either pay up and sign him to an extension, which he doesn't seem to have any interest in, so it's not Brighton's fault. So they either gotta pay up or they gotta sell. But they get to decide when that happens. Arsenal wanted him this January, right? They wanted him to reinforce their midfield. Some other clubs wanted him as well. That's not Brighton's problem, right? They said, okay, we'll sell this January, but the price is going to be here. And they've got every right to put the price up here, particularly because they're currently 6th in the Premier League. They're sitting in a Europa League spot. This doesn't happen every year for Brighton or for a lot of these other clubs. I'm not going to call them smaller clubs, but for these other clubs who are not the big spenders in the Premier League, they're not a top 6 club. They're not up there in this battle for European football every year. So why would they sell now and give up that chance? They got a good thing going, right? It's Brighton's decision when they want to sell. Now, for the right price, they would have, right? For the right price, he could have funded their club for the next 5 years. But they held their ground, and good for them. Good for them. Now, I will say, it's not really Arsenal speaking out about this as a club. I'm not blaming them. It's more pundits and fans. But pundits, stop doing this. Stop doing this. Don't help the big clubs bully the smaller clubs into making moves before they're ready, right? Mearson says, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You're damn right you can, because Brighton took the chance. They bought the cake before it baked, right? They bought Caicedo when he was a young, unproven talent, potential through the roof, and it paid off. Good for them. They've got one chance to cash this in. They've also got one chance to continue to utilize his talent and cash in on a good season, right? These smaller clubs, I did it, smaller, the less wealthy clubs need young players who are playing above their pay range, right? You have to have that to survive. And you only get a season, maybe two, of that. Brighton's in the middle of one with Caicedo right now. They need to reap the benefits and see if they can't get some European football out of this. Imagine they actually finish in the top six and go to the Europa League. There's an additional payday. We're talking generational game changers for clubs like Brighton. So there's no reason for them to sell before they are ready or before the price is exactly right and exactly what they need it to be. So pundits, don't do this. Don't help these big clubs be more of a bully than they already are. They get to bully teams around with their money as it is, right? They get to say, hey, we're going to tempt you with £100 million. And teams like Brighton are tempted to go, God, we don't want to part with this guy right now, but we got to get that payday while we can. That's a form of financial bullying, and that's a part of it, and that's always going to be a part of it, right? You got your clubs that are sellers, you got your clubs that are buyers. That's going to be a part of the landscape no matter what. But we don't need to, as a football community, as a media, as fans, we don't need to make that worse than it is. We don't need to help these big clubs accentuate that. Kudos to Brighton for holding on to Caicedo. Kudos to them for waiting until the time is right and for continuing to go for it this year. You already lost your coach. You already lost some players right before the season, and they're still competing, and that's phenomenal. That's good for football, right? I'm a supporter of a big club, but I still don't want to see this happen. I like that Fulham's in the mix, that Brighton's in the mix, that there's some variance, that you see some big clubs struggling even though they're spending. That's good for the game. What's not good for the game is bullying small clubs into selling their assets, their players, before they are ready and taking away their competition. Brighton is competing with Arsenal and competing with Manchester United and competing with Chelsea, even more so because Chelsea's chasing them, for these European spots to be in the top six. It would be terrible, terrible business all around for them to have sold Caicedo in January. Good for them for not doing it. Shame on any pundit who tries to shame them into the fact that they asked for the price that they wanted. That is their right, their prerogative. What do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Hit me up in the comments. Follow us on Twitter at TotalFIFACM. I want to hear from you. I know this is a hot topic issue, but this is an ongoing problem that needs to be fixed in European football, and we as a community need to make sure we are not making it worse. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at Total FIFA Career Mode.